about? I don't think so. So I think what we could do now, let us swap over and talk about Baldur's Gate 3 and my overall thoughts about it. 100 hours in, let's really talk about Baldur's Gate 3. Okay? Cool. So, when I went into Baldur's Gate 3, my understanding was that it played like Divinity Original Sin 2. For the most part, I was dead on correct. The combat of Baldur's Gate 3 is incredibly similar to Divinity Original Sin 2. I mean, why wouldn't it be? It's made by the same people, right? Now, are there some differences? Yes, there are. I mean, notably those freaking die rolls or whatever, right? That's what you see that's a little different from their other games. But basically, it's kind of the same top-down strategic movement, very slow turn-based. Everyone's a little bit different class, and so they play completely differently kind of style. Very slow-paced. A million factors involved at any moment that could make the game move faster or slower or... you know what I'm saying? It's very, very meticulous. In fact, I think that might be the best actual adjective to use. In this case, meticulous. Okay? It is such a meticulous process to play Baldur's Gate 3 because the game is huge, right? Each act has this giant map that you can explore, and even though at first glance the map doesn't look that big, every area of the game is specifically hand designed to have tons of content in it, whether it's a specific battle, whether it's like a puzzle, an area where you have to talk to everyone and make dialogue choices or whatever. It's all well designed and curated. In fact, that's the best way to describe it. Curated. There's no part of Baldur's Gate 3 that feels like, wow, this part's made just to be grindy. Grindy? There's no repetitiveness or grindiness to the game. In fact, every fight we've done, right, has almost all been unique. There's been some repeat enemies and things like that, but unlike when you're playing another RPG, it's, oh, we're fighting the same enemies for the 100th time, just grind through this fight to get some artificial experience points. The game is nothing like that, right? Everything is meant and designed to be meaningful. So if you played Witcher 3, right, and you said, wow, everything you do in Witcher 3 is meaningful, even the side quests have stories. I mean, yeah, that's literally this game to a T. This game has so much going for it in regards to every little nuance and thing you find has a story. You found a book at the beginning of the game, you think it's just a book. Nope, it's the Necronomicon, and it has a mini game with dice rolls that can lead to optional fights and things. In fact, I don't think I ever did that. Do you remember I found that Necronomicon at the beginning of the game, and everyone was like, oh, go back to that later? I never did. So I just have it in my inventory, and I've never even done anything with it. Was I ever supposed to? I don't know. You see? But that's the thing, like, there's so much content in the game. Everywhere you look, everywhere you go, there's something to do. An optional dungeon, an optional fight, a dialogue check, an area to loot or explore for additional hidden quests and things like that, right? I think that's definitely one of the best parts about the game, is that they put so much time into the content of the game that it feels like a truly immersive world that is living and vibrant and has its own laws and rules and lore and everything like that. It's very complex. Nothing is just like superficial. Everything kind of has their meaning to it, which is cool. So many RPGs don't do that. It's just a big open empty map. Run around, kill a bunch of generic enemies, gather a bunch of generic items. Who the fuck wants to do that, right? So, for me, I really enjoy the fact that the game doesn't feel like anything you've done in the game is a waste of your time, because it all kind of leads somewhere. And at first you don't know that. So you're playing, you're like, geez, I'm overwhelmed with the amount of stuff I'm running into in this game. Every twist and turn I do, there's another thing over here, there's another thing over here. I played for 20 hours, I don't even feel like I have momentum yet. Right, but that's because that's the way the game is. Now, some people might actually say that's a detriment, right? Because in a game, you want to feel momentum, and if you don't have clear-cut momentum, you could feel more like you're lost or you're flubbing about. Yeah, there were definitely times in Baldur's Gate 3 that's how I felt, particularly when it comes to combat. The game does not explain a lot, all right? The game is assuming that you're either going to do a lot of research, all right, into how to play it, or you've played a similar style of game before. Now, the only one I've ever played is Divinity Original Sin 2. So I have a little bit of prerequisite knowledge, but I've never played a D&D game. I never had one with dice rolls or anything like this. Literally, the reason I understand it is you guys, the stream viewers. If it weren't for my stream interacting with me and engaging with the content of the game, I would be utterly lost. I would have been frustrated pretty much every other time I play it, and probably would have never finished the game. I probably would have given up a long time ago and said, this is ridiculous. It's just not accessible. Now, some people argue with me about that. You don't get to argue with me about that because it's my take. From my perspective, my subjective perspective, this game is very inaccessible. But I've tried describing this in a good way. Let me give you an example. FromSoft games, up until, say, maybe Dark Souls 3 or Elden Ring, also were inaccessible. You understand that? Dark Souls 1, Dark Souls 2, Demon Souls, Bloodborne, and even Sekiro to some extent. Those are not accessible games. Those are games that are really fucking hard, and though a lot of people always wanted to play them, they buy them and they fail and they never finish, right? It wasn't until Dark Souls 3 where basically it was dumbed down a bit and you could play it in different ways to succeed. And in Elden Ring, you can just do a fucking Ash summon or a stupid Mimic Tear summon the entire game and it just holds your hand. So there's ways around it in the future games. But the point I'm making is those games are masterpieces. They are. They are beautiful works of art. They are amazing gameplay, interesting lore, great world design, some of the best games I've played in my tenure as a YouTuber. And the fact that originally I hated them because I didn't understand. But once you guys basically gave me a world tour, remember the time, it was the second time ever I played Dark Souls 1. I had just become a live streamer. So I think it was 2013 or 2014, I want to say. And you guys said, summon us and we're going to guide you through the game. So I did it. And once you guys guided me through the game and you taught me the mechanics, how the world works and all this stuff, I was like, my eyes are opened at how effing good this is. I want to play these games now and learn them for myself, which I did. And now I'm a giant fan of FromSoft games and will play all the FromSoft, you know, Soulsborne style games from now until the end of time. Why wouldn't I? Right? So, that being said, that's how I compare to Baldur's Gate 3 here, is that it's inaccessible at face level. You will have to spend countless hours flubbing it, trying through trial and error to learn systems. Even, I'll be honest, even a lot of the things in the game that do try to explain don't explain properly. This just happened yesterday. I'm 100 hours in. I have a legendary weapon I found. It's a trident. And it says right on it, this is a throwing trident. You throw it, wherever the trident lands, creates an area of effect attack. So you could throw this into a group of enemies and hit them all with a big explosion. That's the point of the trident. So yesterday I'm in combat. Enemies are standing there, all grouped. I throw right in the middle. It hits the floor. No explosion. To which the chat says, oh, the trident only works if you actually make contact with an enemy. It doesn't work if you hit inanimate objects in the environment. Doesn't say that in the item description. Doesn't say that anywhere in the gameplay mechanics. You just need to know. And that's, again, just like FromSoft, you just need to know shit. Same thing with this game. So if you're okay with that, great. But if you're someone who's a gamer who's just trying to jump into it and you want to learn, you're going to be frustrated as shit unless you have a guide, unless you have someone here with you holding your hand. It's that kind of a game, all right? Now, once you accept that, if you accept the fact that you need a guide over here to explain mechanics and answer your questions if you're confused, or you need a stream audience that's going to be there every step of the way and help you with your questions, once you've accepted that and you play the game, I think it's an incredibly enriching, fun game. And like I said, super immersive world. At the beginning of this playthrough in December, I knew absolutely nothing about anything from D&D. And then playing it now, I know all about all these different creatures, these different races, the lore behind them. You know, I never knew what a Mind Flayer actually was. I'd seen them a million times. They actually have them in Final Fantasy as well. But I never knew till I played this what exactly they were supposed to be. And now I know all about them, right? I know all about all these different races. The Gith and these Tieflings, who I didn't know who they were. And this is the true immersiveness of a universe. Compared this game with Starfield, right? What did I say about Starfield? When you think about Starfield, what's the thing you think about that sticks out that makes you think about the universe? Nothing. They literally have nothing. Nothing original. It's just humans. In this game, you've got all these races, all these things going on. You immediately get immersed in it. That's a great thing. That keeps you going. Even through those parts of tedium or confusion, the fact that you're in this immersive, interesting, vibrant world makes it feel like it's worth the time investing to keep going, right? There you go. Now, if anything, there are a few complaints that I have, but at the same time, there's some things I really want to praise about the game. Let's get through the complaints first, so that way we can get to the positives, all right? Complaint number one, I do think the combat's too slow-paced. I understand the meticulousness is kind of part of the entire thing about the game that makes it stand out. It's so complex and everything like that, but I don't want to take 30 minutes for every fight in a game, and it seems like that's the best way to play this game, is to, what's every scenario I can do, right? And the thing is, because the game is so complex and meticulous, every fight, you might have a new ability, you might have a new factor, a new party member, a new enemy type you've never seen before with something, some status effect or something you don't understand. So every time that you think you know what you're doing, here comes a monkey wrench thrown into the formula, and now you don't know what you're doing again, and you got to do it very slow to try to figure out how to do it right. So there's very few times in this playthrough where I felt like I could just steamroll a fight. Now, you might say that's a good thing. Well, for some people. But for someone who likes to relax when they play games, if every fight becomes ultra tense because at any moment something can happen you don't know, don't expect, or literally haven't seen before, it's an air of suspense, sure, but it's also tenseness. It's also stress, and it makes it that the combat isn't very fun, per se, to do. Like, a lot of RPGs, the point is to play enough that your characters level up, that now you've hit your stride, and now when you go into combat, you can just beat the living shit out of everything, right? Hey, I put my hours into this game, so my characters are all leveled up, and I can take on any challenge easily, no problem with my eyes closed. That is not the case with this game. With this game, every fight could be different and a challenge, and even though you can max your levels, and the fight still, what the hell is this? They're kicking my ass. How did this happen? What went wrong? Right? So that's a little different. And that's okay. I'm not saying that's bad. For me, that is a criticism. I do prefer a game where maybe after a while you hit a stride and you feel comfortable in your shoes and it's not constant second guessing, micro-analyzing. This game is definitely like that. It's not very relaxing. Let me put it that way. The game is not relaxing. It's not. I don't think it's meant to be. But, man, I do enjoy more relaxing RPGs, and this one is not that, okay? Also, the pacing. The pacing has issues. I think everyone's going to agree on this one. There's parts of the game where it feels like you're turboing through the plot, but then you don't want to miss content. So then you end up going on a 30-hour diversion, doing millions of pieces of side content, and then at one point you're like, what was the main plot? What was I doing? Is it even the main plot at this point? Because I'm not sure, because I was presented with so much other things that are going on that also seem important, that I'm not even sure if that was the plot anymore, right? And I'm not saying that the content's bad. I'm just saying there's so much of it that the pacing actually suffers, you know? And it is weird in that regard that the game also doesn't do a good job of, like, directing you towards what's important. You just got to kind of figure it out. Yes, there's waypoints on the map. Excuse me. But every time you head towards a waypoint, there's another waypoint, and then there's something else going on, and there's something else going on. It's like, whoa. So you get pulled in a million directions, and you don't really know what you should be focusing on. Like, if I were actually trying to hurry through this game, I don't know how I would do it. I really don't. Like, I'd probably be so confused of what to do. And I will say this. Sorry, I got a frog in my throat right now. I will say this as well. Another major criticism of the game is that it's too long. And I know some people will be like, now wait a minute. The game, you just said all the game's content is meaningful. You just said it's a super immersive world, right? If it really is so long, does that not mean value for your dollar? Does that not mean that's a good thing? If you paid the same amount of money for Baldur's Gate 3 as you did a game that's 1/4 as long, isn't that good? Well, objectively, on paper, with absolutely no point of reference, no frame of reference, no point of view, yes, objectively, having more content is better than having less content. I really can't argue with you there. That's a factual argument, okay? Baldur's Gate 3 has an insane amount of content in it for $70, all right? Now, it might even be cheaper by now. I don't know how much it goes for, but I don't think anyone's going to complain that if you drop $70 on a game like this, that, oh, there's not enough. What a ripoff. What? No, you'd be an asshole to say that. You're just lying. It's not a ripoff. There's insane amounts of content in the game. But This is not a game for the faint of heart. This is not a game for a casual gamer. This is not a game for someone who only plays games a couple times a week, right? This is a game where you have to immerse yourself in the universe. You have to constantly be playing it to remember the game mechanics and everything going on. Every time you level up, your entire way you play a character might change. And now you got to remember that, and you got to latch onto that. You got to know what's going on with these plot lines. There may be plot lines in the game that aren't discussed for dozens of hours, then they come back, and you have to remember what the hell they're talking about, right? If you're not constantly playing a game like this, it's too hard to immerse yourself in it. Like, I would argue you have to immerse yourself in the world of Baldur's Gate 3 if you actually want to have a good time with it. If you're playing it super slow and super casual, I actually don't think you can have a good time with this game at all. I think it's quite the contrary, actually, where you will be lost and you will feel like you're wasting your time. You'll be too confused, right? The fact that when I started playing Baldur's Gate 3, I waited until I knew I was going to have a large amount of time to focus on it was the right move. Because a lot of people ask me, why are you not playing it when it came out at launch? Because it actually came out at launch on what was it? On PS5, right? It actually came out earlier. Yeah, it actually came out much earlier. Hold on. Okay, got distracted. Yeah. If I had played it much earlier in like September, I never would have been able to focus on this game at all. I would have been basically in a situation where I couldn't play it enough to really enjoy it, focus on it, immerse myself in it, and get good at it. You know what I mean? So because of that, the way I see it is you have to be in a situation in your life where you could sit down and just focus on it. I couldn't imagine trying to play this game less than like 12 hours a week. Seriously, like you have to play it like 10 to 12 hours a week to really get into the meat of it and understand it and learn it and like it. How many people can do that? Right? If you're playing it casually, I can't imagine liking this game. I'm just like, meh, it's too much. Because if you play it casually, you'll never beat it. I mean, the game, I'm at 100 hours and we're just arriving at Baldur's Gate 3. People are saying you probably got another 30, 40 hours left if you really want to see all the content and finish the game. If you're playing it, let's say you play it 3 nights a week for 2 hours, 6 hours a week. So how many months are you going to play this game? Right? And again, this has to be your only game. Because you can't play other games because that's all your gaming time that you have. You know what I'm saying? There's got to be essentially a cutoff where it's like, how much is too much? How much content is too much content? At what point does a game become so much stuff to do that sadly you're in a situation where it's not for a common person to just be able to jump in and enjoy it, right? I don't know. It's been tough for me. I started it in December when I knew there weren't any game releases. I played it through January into February when there were game releases, but I continued to focus on it like that. And thankfully now, I feel like all that investment is paying off within Act 3. All this crazy stuff is happening, but now I'm out of time. I've been playing this game 4+ times a week. I'm out of time, man. I couldn't play it anymore. You know, as a variety streamer, right? I can only play a certain game a certain amount. Now you might say, well, you're a different case because, you know, you're a full-time gamer, but you're a variety streamer. You're right. But everyone else should have a life, right? Everyone else has a job. They have a family. They have school. They have this shit going on. They can't just sit around playing Baldur's Gate 3 all day every fucking day, right? So if that's the case, how the fuck could they get through this game fast? They can't unless they have nothing to do all day. So who's that? Who gets to sit at home all day on their ass, has infinite money, doesn't need to work, and can just play Baldur's Gate 3 for 2 months straight? I'd like to know who this is. Can someone say, it's me? Because how did you get to that point in life? How many lottos did you win? I mean, I just don't understand it. I'm a full-time gamer, and I could only get 100 hours into this game in 2 months. You see? So again, the point I'm making is I feel that the game is so long that it's a detriment. A game like this, perhaps, should be more streamlined. But that's my take, and you can always disagree, and that's fine. My subjective take is when I play a game, I prefer that it gets more streamlined. I prefer that I will get my reward for the insane amount of investment in it before I play 150 hours, right? And the other thing that needs to be said, and I won't know until I beat the game, hopefully with the amount that you are investing in the game, you get a good ending. Can you imagine investing over 100 hours into a game and the ending is terrible? I mean, there's been so many choices you make in this game. Hopefully they all factor into the ending you get, right? Now, outside of that, another thing, okay, is basically, I want to talk about a really positive thing about the game that I really like. All right, I don't want to talk about this the entire podcast, but here's a positive thing that I like about the game that I wish more RPGs would do, all right? So I'm 100 hours into this game. So guess what level I'm at? Am I at level 50, level 70, level 99? No, I'm at level 10. Level 10. In 100 hours of gameplay. On average, it took about 10 hours per level. Okay? You might say, well, wait a minute. How does that factor in? Because in this game, levels are actually rewarding. Unlike in other RPGs where usually leveling is just an arbitrary thing. A little bit more HP, a little bit more MP. All your stats go up by a couple points. Maybe rarely you get a new ability. In this game, every level is actually meaningful. Every level. Half the time when you level up, you're getting a whole new thing to do for your character. Maybe it's a new class ability. It's a new trait that they call. And it changes the way that you play. Wow, you went from level 2 to level 3 spells. Well, all the level 3 spells are different from level 2 and they're super powerful. Oh, now you get a new trait that lets you attack an extra time or get a new kind of attack or whatever. And it's good. I hate it the fact that most of the time when you're playing these RPGs, you got to get through like 5 levels before something meaningful happens. You got to go from level 20 to 25 before something happens that changes the game and makes you feel like you're more powerful. That's stupid. Why do we need 4 arbitrary levels between? Just make it that there's one level jump and that level is meaningful. And that's what they did. They streamlined the leveling process, but they actually made it feel like when you level, that's a big ass reward for you. There's been times when I was in the middle of like a dungeon or an area and I was semi-struggling, then I leveled up and all of a sudden my character is so much more powerful now that now I can just plow through and kick ass, and I like that about it. Give me that big reward for the amount of investment I'm doing in the game. And I feel like the leveling system is one of the best I've ever seen in any RPG. I want more RPGs to do that. I'm tired of just get a level and waste time. What was the point of the level, right? There's too many RPGs where you constantly just gain levels and nothing happens. I mean, even Elder Scrolls is guilty of it. You get da-da-doom, da-da-doom. The meter goes up and someone plays a drum. Da-da-doom, da-da-doom. Great, what the fuck did that do for me? Nothing. Right? It didn't fucking improve my game, right? So I definitely like that about the game. And I will say this, 100 hours in, they did a very good job now that we're this far in with character development. A lot of these characters have very much had evolving stories that developed over time. Some better than others. Like I would say, if you take a look at the whole party, like Lae'zel, Shadowheart, you could argue Astarion, but basically there's like 3 or 4 party members that have had really, really good story arcs that are coming to culmination now. I do feel there's some characters that are not as good. Like I actually feel like Will and Gale just don't have great story arcs. They have stories, but they're just not that interesting or involved. Like Lae'zel completely evolves as a character over the course of the game. By the end of the game, she's changed as a person. That's what you want to see in a good narrative, right? Some of these characters, they're just like kind of really one-dimensional, and it's just one little thing they're following the whole game, but others just like way better, okay? But I like that. I want meaningful characters in my games, and I feel like they're doing a good job with that, and I'm curious to see how these character stories end. Some of them is really well done, okay? The thing is, I'm sure everyone's going to have a different take on that, but I like the fact that you get at first I didn't care who any of these fucking people were, and you get them all at the beginning pretty much. Like you get every party member almost right off within the first 20 hours. You have everyone. So it's like, so now how do I know what happens, right? And it's like, well, eventually you'll get your answers. You got to be invested in the game, and I do like where the plot is going with a lot of these characters. So that's a good thing, right? So honestly, my major complaints about the game are the combat isn't as interesting as I felt it could be because it's too complicated, too slow paced. I do feel like, sadly, it's too long, too much of a time investment of a game. And I'll say one other complaint. Now I'm starting to notice at the end of the game some lack of polish and issues. I'm definitely noticing that. Like, now we're in Act 3. We're seeing some bugs and things happen, some weird things happen that you wish didn't happen. I guess when you get a game this long and this daunting of a game with this much content in it, right? That essentially you're looking at a situation where, yeah, this is crazy that there's this much investment in it, and they're going to have flaws at the end. You can't have a game with this much content that's not going to start to break down. I've actually heard Act 3 was way worse at the beginning of the game, and a lot of people said, yes, the entire game breaks down in Act 3. It's like a buggy mess. But now people are saying they've patched it a lot, and it's a lot more solid. So that's a good thing, obviously. So there you go. But there's a lot of positives about the game, too. Like I said, I wouldn't be investing 100 hours of my stream time in the last 2 months if I didn't feel like this game wasn't worthy of that. There's a lot of great moments we've had with this game, a lot of memes that are coming out of it, a lot of fun times, a lot of great engagement. I'll say this is one of the most engaging games that I've ever played. We're playing it, and every time you guys are here to help me with it, we talk about the lore, we talk about game mechanics, you enjoy my rage when I get frustrated, but you also like the fact that I'm really enjoying the story elements and making interesting choices. A lot of people have even said, wow, your playthrough's different than mine because you made different choices, and we like that, right? So that's cool. But honestly, I'll tell you, I'm shocked, because here's the thing. When you think about all the other games out there that are mainstream successes, Fortnite and or other team-based online shooter games that are very popular, all the rage right now, Call of Duty, Madden, and or FIFA, which I don't think FIFA anymore, but you know what I mean, like those yearly sports games that were always a huge hit, right? When you think of all of these tried and true, sell the shit out of every year style games, right? That's mainstream gaming. You have to understand that. So for a game like this to somehow have broken through that wall of what's popular and hit the mainstream and become a game that everyone knows and freaking everyone played and or at least bought, probably didn't finish, but are playing, and a game that won Game of the Year not only among gaming journalists, but also among common gamers. That is a feat. But again, I have to ask questions such as, did it really win it on its own merits of being an outstanding game, which thankfully it is, right? Or did it win it on its merits of other things? Like, all you saw in the media when the game came out was, are you aware that you can make love to every single person in camp? And did you know that there's kissing animations and you could have genitalia animations and things? It's like, what? But why are we talking about this? Is that the core of the game, right? Is it Baldur's Boner 3 or is it Baldur's Gate 3? So why does that have to become the focus that everyone talks about when you talk about the game, instead of the actual good things about the game? There's great things about the game. I would say that relationship shit is the least one out of all of them. If there's a feature in there, if you want it, great. Enjoy it. But that's not even what the focus of the game is. So why did that become the public discourse? Why is the public discourse so fucking immature about these games? Seriously. Like right now, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth has tons of great stuff about it. Amazing things. Guess what's the number one thing about it on the internet? Oh, when they get to Costa del Sol and everyone's wearing a swimsuit. Look how hot literally every party member is. And not just the girls, the guys. Oh, they're so hot. They're ripped in their fucking Speedos, underwear. It's like, that's like a moment in the game meant for fan service. That's not the game. Why does that all that people talk about, right? It's like, why does this become the discourse about the game? You know what I want to hear about? Other things about Final Fantasy VII Rebirth that are good. Not, you posted that for fucking 400,000 reposts on fucking social media. You know what I mean? Stupid. And I will say this about Baldur's Gate 3. I have to wonder, would this game have sold as well as it did if it didn't have all that, right? You compare that also to a game like Cyberpunk. When Cyberpunk 2077 came out, even though the game was leaky dog shit when it originally released, everyone was talking about, oh my God, there's all this in the game and that in the game and this sex and that sex and sex. And it's like, it's not a sex game. It's not a fucking rated X porno game. So why is that what everyone talks about? It really, it's disappointing for humanity that we still degrade ourselves to that level, that this is what the focus is. I mean, is it in the game? Okay. Is that all we have to talk about? No, but that's what happens. Like, people just can't control them fucking selves for some god reason. This game is great on its own merits. It doesn't need that. The fact that it's in there is, I guess, is an extra. But my God, I wonder how many people ran out like horn dogs and bought the game because they heard this, right? You gotta wonder. You actually gotta wonder. I wonder if they did like a poll, like an actual poll of people who bought Baldur's Gate 3. All the people who bought it, how many people actually would say, yes, that was a factor in my decision to buy the game because it had that content, right? I wonder. For me, zero, but I still really like the game, right? So you gotta wonder what the mindset of people is, right? Anyway, yes, I know it's a part of nature and all that. I have to call it out because this game has that stuff. A lot of games don't, right? This game does. And you got to wonder how many people actually thought that was a major factor in their decision to buy the game. Anyway. So, my thoughts about Baldur's Gate 3 100 hours in. It's a great game. I totally get it. It is an anomaly. How often do you get an RPG with this much content all in the base game, right? In the base game. This isn't, Baldur's Gate 3 plus several DLCs and expansions. This is Baldur's Gate 3 base game has this much content in it, right? But I will say there are things about it I wish were better or different. Maybe it's just my subjective take. Personally, I like some things better. I would have preferred it to be a different way. That doesn't mean the game is bad in any way. I don't see the world as black and white. Just because there's something I don't particularly love about the game doesn't mean it's bad. It just means I don't particularly like it. So that being said, yeah, I feel like the game is great, but I do have some criticisms of it, and I think that's fair. Now, a lot of people have said, would I have made this my game of the year for 2023 if I actually had played the entirety of the game in 2023? First of all, I still can't answer that question. I'm 100 hours into a game that's going to be like 130 or 40 hours by the time I beat it. Until I actually see the ending, I can't give that. Because imagine this. Imagine I play 130 hours and the ending sucks. That could completely skew my take on the game. Because a lot of people like to say, oh, it's not the end, the destination, it's the journey. I will agree to some extent, but man, that's a cop-out for game developers and writers who just don't know how to write. Because there's too many games these days where they have good plot ideas and good momentum, and then they just squander it by the end. And this is not just games. This happens with TV shows. This happens with movies. It's sad. You have to have a good ending to a saga for people to invest all that time into it. I really hope the ending of this game is good. Really. If the game is one of the best endings I've ever seen, then maybe it would be one of my favorite games of all time. If the ending is just meh, then it's a good game, but not a groundbreaking, blow my mind game, right? If the ending sucks, I might hate it, It really could be a big determining factor. That's why I don't want to make determinations now. I'll tell you this, as of now, I still like Alan Wake 2 better. I think the plot of Alan Wake 2 and some of the unique mechanics of that game made it feel like an insanely unique experience. Not to say that this game isn't too, but right now, I would say, yes, I did like Alan Wake 2 more. But my opinion could change by the time I beat the game. Of course, the question is, now, when will I beat it? Because, again, I'm not someone who could just sit around for 3 months playing one video game. Don't have that luxury. So who knows what's going to happen in this ending? I have no clue, right? I go, anyway, we might not see it for 3 more months, right? Literally. Because if I'm only playing this game once a week, so you figure 3 hours a week, 4 weeks a month, that's what, 12 hours a month? So 3 more months. So, March, April, I'll beat it at the end of May, right? We'll finally see the fucking ending. When it's that drawn out, does anyone even care? That's the sad fact about a game like this, too, is when you have a game with that much content, it's that long, a lot of people will just never finish it. And that's sad, because the game's good, right? You want people to see the ending of their big endeavor, this giant masterpiece game you made. But when you make it that daunting to get to the finish line, a lot of people will never make it. It's like running an insanely long marathon. People just give up halfway through, right? What are you going to do? Even if it's an amazing marathon with the best running conditions and whatever, you still might not make it, So, man, I don't know. overall, I'm not exactly sure how to feel about the game yet, but I do like it a lot. I'm having tons of fun with it. Obviously, I love streaming this game with you guys, and the engagement you give me and the fun that we've had has been pretty outstanding. Okay? So, I guess we'll see continuing forward. Will people still keep coming for the game if I'm only playing it once a week because I'm focusing on Final Fantasy and then other games? I hope so. I want to see the end. After 100 hours, I do not want to basically give up on the game now. I want to see the conclusion. But man, it's going to be hard to get there. It's so goddamn long. You know? I guess we'll find out. Okay. So, Baldur's Gate 3, thumbs up. Looking forward to more. But it is going to get downgraded. It's not going to be played as much. I hope we get to the end and see what happens. And then I'll give you my full perspective once I've beaten it. In like 3 months, I guess. I don't know. Okay, time for shout-outs because now we've already talked about that so long that we need to get to shout-outs.